few people have messaged me, after the Lady Grace interview, and of course, seeing some of my posts that I've been making on Facebook recently. And I have to say, I stayed away from Facebook because it tends to be a bit of an echo chamber, especially for our two larger political parties here, because they have a lot of yes men that pop up and kind of reinforce, from a very subjective position, the grand job that has been done over the last 4 years of running the business that is Country St. Martin. And I also, people were like, Melissa, you seem to be so different this time around. And I am. I am because, to be nice, to be nice while also being professional, it's not working out, guys, because I think it's always cute to me how when I in particular start to respond and react to people with facts. It's not lies, it's facts that are being stated in a certain tone. All of a sudden, it's, oh my God, PFP is getting so violent. Meanwhile, you had your cabinet staff out here calling me and Rayon every homophobic and racist slur under the sun on Facebook. You had the former minister of Rami, relatives out here calling us all kind of names. Like, you can hide behind your burner page, your writing style has not changed. So it's cute to me that now that we've started to give some pushback and started to comment, all of a sudden it's, you guys are not classy. You guys aren't classy. Like, this isn't it, guys. This isn't it. And in case persons have issues looking up the meaning of it, you can go to dictionary.com and you can look that up. It's not difficult, actually. It just kind of means that when you start to tone police people and you start to pretend as if you have all the facts, you kind of come across as if you believe you're a judge and jury and that you can settle the dispute about what is right or wrong in how someone is being addressed. And I'm here to tell you that no, get used to it. Get used to it. I saw some of the exchanges under the former Minister of Finance post about facts, I guess. And then I saw Mr. Chittick's post about facts. And I have to commend publicly Mr. Chittick. I have had, a couple conversations with him in the past. I have always tried to keep it very, respectful, especially in considering his role at GB at the time. Because I believe that people are doing, the job that they were put there to do. And I read his post and I thought, here you have someone that is literally stating, who was in the job, stating for the public's record, the issues and the interference that GEBE has experienced over the last, I would say, 14 years. Of course, we've always had interference with our government-related entities. From since I was a child, it was always looked at as, well, this is, this belongs to this ministry and that belongs to that. And back in the day was, this is this commissioners, this is that commissioners. But these things are not your piggy bank. They're not yours. They're actually the people's. And I read Mr. Chittick's post and then juxtaposed it against, that's another big word for Elmo. So look that up too while you're at it. So I saw that juxtaposed against MP Irion's post and I thought, clearly someone is lying. Now, I don't like to be called a liar. I don't like to see Mr. Chittick be called a liar because that's the way it goes with you all. The way it goes historically is that persons do not speak out because they're afraid of being politically victimized in this country. And everybody has done it. I'm not going to lie. I've heard stories about people being victimized back in the day by the Democratic Party. I've heard stories about being victimized by the USP, by whoever or whatever. You understand? But I think that the National Alliance has perfected it to a point where even people who maybe come from families that maybe used to support y'all in the past are terrified of speaking the truth. And I hope to empower them to do so, not because I think I'm a moral arbiter of what is classy, but because I want to be the person who allows people to be able to tell the truth and not be afraid of being fired, not be afraid of being removed from their CEO position because they don't want to give the land in Hopi State for some, piecemeal housing project, just so land that they bought with GB money, with our money, St. Martin people's money. You understand? I think that at a certain point in time, we have to get really real about what has happened with GB. I've been holding on to a document for a parliamentary inquiry into GEBE, and I was hoping to be able to drop that into Parliament this term, but hey, Now we have an election, so I'm hoping that people will give PFP the opportunity to come back with more seats and to actually get that inquiry started. Because when we start to delve down into it and we start calling people forward, like Mr. Chittick, and we start asking to see emails that I'm sure exist, where I'm sure management was warning about the capacity issues, because that's a lie. I think that's a lie under the MP's post about we were never warned about capacity, because I don't think GB workers are that incompetent to not send up red flags to government. And at the end of the day, it is up to government to answer. And who did they send a red flag to? They send a red flag via the supervisory board of directors. So let's look at the supervisory boards that have been there. Let's look at the one that was there at the time of the hack. And all of a sudden, everybody started tendering their resignation the minute it became clear that the hack was worse than was let on in the first place. And these are the questions that I want someone to have in their head, even as you're sitting now in the heat, even as you're sitting in the dark, okay? Because I can be right there with you. I don't have a generator at home, right? I don't have a generator. That's fine. I can get one, but you cannot. And that's what I think we need to start thinking about. The people that are not able to see their way literally tonight on how they're going to sleep comfortably, I would really like to hear then what is the plan for them. And I cannot in good conscience say that GB has never warned anybody. And suddenly everyone wants proof of something. Suddenly it's, but I have to see, but the emails, no. If Mr. Chittick wants to share the more nitty-gritty details of what he went through under the people that were at his supervisory board of directors at the time, and he's willing to do so. If Devon Denbrook wants to share what he went through with his supervisory board that removed him when he tried to remove the cancer within GB, you understand? I think that is up to them to do so.
Correct. You said the vacation allowance will be paid on June 15th,
Yes,
excluding the 1% and the 2% indexation.
that's correct.
You went on to say that the budget was passed and the law can only go into effect as of June 26th. Am I correct?
That's correct.
Can you tell me then, after June 26th, will the 1%, including the 2% indexation, be paid
It will be
retroactively?
Yes, it will be paid retroactively once the legislation is also put in place, because there's two factors. Legislation needs to be put in place, and also the budget goes into effect as of June 26th. So those two factors have to be taken into consideration, and that will be done. Once it's done, then we will definitely pay the 1% and the 2% retroactive to January 1.
My next question regarding investments. The government have said, the former government, on numerous occasions, that after a decade, they were able to secure capital investment, CAPEX. There are a number of projects that these monies are to be used for. Since you are only going to be in office just over 3 months, or 3 months, because you have called elections, what are those projects that will be executed within this 3 months period?
Thank you for your question, Bibi. As I mentioned, I would be having a separate press conference to which I will be inviting the press. At that time, I would be explaining this 90 million guineas in detail, because I believe it's important that everyone really understands what was left in the coffers, into which I would take your questions at that point.
Thank you.
You refer to the importance of transparency and allude to that's what you're hoping to improve with the press conference. Every minister, outgoing minister, produces a transition document for its cabinet. So there's there's the public statements from the previous government that painted one picture. And then there's a transition document which should be realistic, which should be accurate, because that gives you the basis to run the ministry as you come in. The previous government had said they're willing to make that transition document public. Would this government consider making those transition documents public? By all means, redact whatever is confidential. But I think the public is confused about what's the right story. There's money, there's no money. So would you be willing to make those transition documents public and redact whatever is confidential or dangerous for the government?
Thank you for your question. That question is something that I believe the entire COM would have to decide on. That's something that we have not discussed. However, I think your question can be taken into consideration, and together we can come to a decision on that matter.
Madam Finance Minister, earlier this week, the Minister of TIAT indicated that the budget has been cut by 22 million guilders. Can you tell us as to what ministries have been impacted by such a cut?
I believe the question was, or the statement was made when I stated in the last press conference that we would have to cut across the board 22 million, and that's within all ministries. So all ministries are definitely affected by this cut.
Previous Council of Ministers reduced the travel budget for Parliament with 68%, from some 600,000 guilders to a little over 200 for 15 MPs. And then the Minister of TIAT said that he was going to introduce ship registry, big fishing trawlers under St. Martin flag. That never happened, so the money for that, the 400,000, didn't come back. So where are the MPs now traveling from? Where's the money coming from for the travels to Parlatino and other travels?
Jacqueline, thank you for your question. At this time, I do not have a response that I can give you. There is something as well that we would have to look into, and then I can revert to that in my separate press conference that I would be having. I would be able to answer your question at that time.
Your social and health insurance is your social and health insurances.
Are you SXV insured? Do you have a valid medical insurance status? SXV is cardless. Request your My SXV account today and enter the virtual office of SXV. Go to sxv.sx and sign up now.
Your social and health insurances.
Telem. And you mentioned that Telem is currently purchasing its internet bandwidth from another company because I think it was the SR, the line that supplies internet bandwidth to Telem is not functional. Can you please go in and explain what's happening, why it hasn't been repaired, and what the impact has been on the quality of data service through Telem or whatever services.
Thank you for your question, Emil. Yes, I did mention that while I was working there, I think in 2017 or prior to that, around that time, there was a breakage in the cable, the SMPR1. SMPR1 is our fiber optic cable that's landed here in the Smithcoms building since 2000. That is our bandwidth, that is our backbone for internet service provider through Telem. I'm saying our because I feel as if I'm still working there, but sorry about that. But it had an issue with, it broke. The fiber had a breakage in the waters of Puerto Rico. And I remember and I recall we were supposed to, there was a lot of bureaucracy around the government of Puerto Rico to allow us to go in the waters and make the amendment. I was told recently by the management that fiber optic cable will be completely amended, hopefully between now and next month. And what that has done, that means the company had to lease another internet bandwidth, which is costly, and there's more congestion. And that's why the internet service has been this terrible. So as soon as we can get SMPR1 restored, I think for sure Telem will be able to provide quality service. Yes.
Mr. For some time now, the issue of the St. Martin Tourist Authority has been a concern. In fact, what we have not been seeing is the establishment of such an entity. Is it your intention as minister to at least get the ball rolling on this establishment for St. Martin?
Thank you for that question, Stephen. And yes, 1 trillion%. It is my number one priority to get the ball rolling. Our staff, together, we're working on assessing what's there because I think last year already had a board and there's no board. So we're trying to assess what's there and see how we can really develop it. It is one of my number one priority. You'll be hearing from me very, very soon on that. That's number one for me, to make sure it's established.
I would like to ask you this question related to economic development. Building permits have been issued for very large apartment complexes. Now we know about Carbon and Red Pond and other developments that were not completed and the investors duped. Still, how can government prevent that the developers are selling these condos pre-sale online, have investors pay not through escrow but directly to the company's account, etc. Because Carbon and Red Pond are not the only projects on the island where that happens. And then how to protect the image of the island as a destination where it's interesting or attractive to invest.
Thank you so much for your question. That's a very, very important issue that we need to also consider. That's something we would have to do a full assessment on and come up with structure. I think what's missing a lot these last couple of years is paying attention to structure, to policy, and making an accountability. And that is one of our main focus. Well, for sure, this government's main focus, because I've been hearing it from other ministers, that we're going to be paying keen attention to making sure accountability and structure is in place. I haven't been able to delve into that as yet, but that too is one of a priority for me. Thank you.
Just to show you that we did follow the data here. This isn't something that we just picked and chose areas that we thought would be easy to protect, easy to manage. We really selected these areas based on what the habitat map showed us with Project Carina. Suggested species protections. I have several here. I actually only zoomed in to 2 of them, which is parrotfish, number 1, and mangroves, number 5, on following slides. So for the rest, I'll just do a short overview with you. Diadema or long spine sea urchins, I think, should be given full protections in St. Martin, and as they are essential to reducing algae growth, and they have gone through mass die-offs, both in 2022 and in the 1970s. These species are under threat. We're actually doing research with Saba Conservation Foundation and their partners to see what their level of recovery is in St. Martin. Queen conch needs updated legislation to ensure that conch can reproduce before harvesting. Currently, we do have queen conch legislation, but it's focused on the size of the shell, and that doesn't actually tell you whether that conch is sexually mature and has reproduced or not. Anytime we introduce a fishing restriction that is based on size, the reason we're introducing that is to ensure that that species got big enough and old enough to have babies, to reproduce, so that it can be replaced. We don't want to just stop people from taking everything out unless that's the worst case scenario. We have such bad data that we have to do something like that. We just want to make sure that the fishermen that are harvesting it now, their grandchildren will also be able to, right? So for the queen conch, that would mean addressing the legislation so that it would be focused on the lip size of the conch and not just the shell size. For the Caribbean spiny lobster, the update that needs to happen there is we need to include that egg-bearing females cannot be removed as well. There is currently a size restriction that follows international standards, and that's quite good for us. But egg-bearing females should be left behind, firstly so the eggs that they're bearing can hatch, but also because they're obviously a valuable reproduction species. Mangroves I will go over in the next slide, and then seasonal closures. Seasonal closures we included as an option for the Management and Scientific Authority, which right now is the Nature Foundation, to restrict fishing activity via seasonal closures for population recovery of species that are present on the CITES 1 and 2 annexes and the IUCN Red List for endangered or critically endangered. So I would love to say that we could produce closures for any species that's at risk, but we picked extremely limited lists here so that that could be managed properly. And there would be a reason that is internationally stated for protecting that species. So specifically on parrotfish, I spoke about grazers. Just like the diadema and conch, parrotfish act as a grazer species. Seasonal restrictions and size restrictions are needed to boost reproduction of parrotfish. Other Caribbean islands, including almost all the ABC islands, are currently introducing a full fishing ban to parrotfish. They're very ecologically important. As I said before, they really combat the algae production, but also they contribute very highly to the white sand beaches. The impact on St. Martin, we need to support the creation of St. Martin's white sand beaches and the algae protection on the coastlines. Suggested measures again include the size limits, but those will be specific based on the species. There's 3 different species of parrotfish found in St. Martin, and all of them sexually mature at a different rate, so that would be introduced specific to the size. Next is the mangroves. For ecological importance, mangroves play a crucial role in coastline ecosystem protection by stabilizing shorelines during storms, preventing erosion, providing a habitat for an array of marine and terrestrial species. They also provide protection from storm surge and flooding, reducing the impact of hurricanes and other extreme weather events for coastal communities and infrastructure. Our suggested measure for these, because there are several different species of mangroves on St. Martin, is limited to the red and the black mangroves, neither of which, incidentally, can be found on the ponds, Great Salt Pond or Little Bay Pond. The red and black mangroves are still limited to the lagoon. These proposed legislation measures would state that any development impacting either the red or black mangrove species must present a comprehensive environmental impact assessment and plans for compensation for loss of nature. So if this is our best case scenario, if these were all to be instituted, what would we need to actually be successful in this? Because we cannot just introduce legislation and then not be able to back it up. For Nature Foundation as the Management and Scientific Authority, we do need support from other ministries. As I mentioned early on, we have received support from the Ministry of ROMI for several years, and we have incidental project-based support from additional ministries. For example, the Ministry of TIAT contributed greatly to the management of invasive species. But the service level agreement is limited to the deliverables and the tasks set out by the Ministry of ROMI because they regularly contribute. That has meant that for several years, the public outreach percentage priority has been very low. Several of you know that I've been working for a couple of years trying to get a collaboration with the Ministry of Education to support nature and science-based education in all schools in St. Martin, full-time with the Nature Foundation. Additionally, support with maritime affairs and fisheries through TIOT and agriculture for terrestrial-based would go a very long way in bettering our collaborations and making sure that our advice, our research advice, our assessments are being used properly. The Institute
Your social and health insurance is your social and health insurance.
Are you SXV insured? Do you have a valid medical insurance status? SXV is cardless. Request your My SXV account today and enter the virtual office of SXV. Go to sxv.sx and sign up now.
Your social and health insurance.
The police in St. James have released the names of persons of interest for the parish. Commanding officer for the St. James Police Division, Superintendent Aaron Samuels, says the men are wanted for several crimes.
One is Joseph Mackenzie, OCGO. He is responsible for several murders within the Flanker and Salt Spring Floor Hill community. We also want one called Omar Largi, OC Not Nice. He's also wanted for murder. The third individual that we're interested in is Lico Maxwell, OC Junior. We want those persons to turn in themselves at the nearest possible police station. They can either come in with their attorney or with a justice of the peace or any good citizen who they believe they can trust and bring them in. We will continue our pursuit for them, so it's in their best interest to turn themselves in.
He says the police continues to keep a close watch on a number of areas. In the meantime,
we have still had our challenges. Last year, for the month of May, was over the years, May has been a very active month for the Western Jamaica, and we have seen an increase compared to last month, but it's a decrease compared to last year in May. So we are still optimistic that we will continue our reduction in murders. As it stands now, we have a 20% reduction in murder compared to last year. And we are pushing as hard as we can to capture some of the persons who we believe are contributing to the problems that we face.